YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. In covering the flash floods in Texas, I have to cover one of the articles out there that I saw, because obviously with everything that happened in Maui, we know a lot of those children went missing in Maui after the fires were set in Lahaina. So that's where my mind was at when I did my first video talking about these children who went missing. Well, lo and behold, another article is out there in the New York Post that talks about this specific camp where the girls went missing and how this camp is actually a camp for the Texas political elite. And people like the Bushes have gone through Camp Mystic. People like Lyndon B. Johnson and his bloodline have gone through Camp Mystic. So this is only speculation, but it's definitely worth noting if we think about everything that actually happened in Maui with those missing children and how this could potentially be a cover-up for something bigger. Now, again, it's only speculation. I don't want to obviously put thoughts in people's minds, but this is where my mind started to go, especially with that word mystic, right? We all remember during Pizzagate covering Mystic Pizza. And of course, it's also very suspicious to have a camp for Christian girls that uses the word mystic, right? Because we know about mysticism and we know how it's esoteric in many different ways. And of course, the occult is esoteric in many, many ways. So I'm going to read for you this article that's out there. You could actually back it up because there's an article from 2011 that goes into more detail about this specific camp. But this is what's out there. And I obviously need to cover this for people to hear it. So the all-girls Christian summer camp in Texas, where a frantic search is underway for survivors of a catastrophic flood, has been a destination for the daughters of Texas's political elite since it was founded nearly a century ago. Camp Mystic is located in the tiny town of Hunt, and it has been a beloved summer retreat for some of the most influential young women in the Lone Star State and national politics, according to a 2011 Texas Monthly story. The daughters of former Texas governors Dan Moody, Prince Daniel, and John Connolly, who was shot as he sat next to President JFK when he was assassinated in Dallas in 1963, all attended the camp, according to the outlet. The daughters, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters of Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson, who JFK's successor, and one of Texas's most formidable politicians, also summered at Camp Mystic, per the Texas Monthly. James Baker, who served as a chief of staff to Republican Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, sent his daughter and granddaughter to Camp Mystic. While attending Southern Methodist University, future First Lady Laura Bush was a Camp Mystic counselor years before she married George W. Bush, who would serve as Texas's governor. He, like his father, became president, according to the Texas Monthly as well. So you have connections right there with really powerful bloodlines, okay? You have Lyndon B. Johnson's family, but specifically you have the Bushes, who might be the most corrupt family that's ever existed. I mean, you want to look at the Clinton bloodline, that's fine, but you also got to take a good hard look at the Bush bloodline and the creation of the CIA and the things that they were involved doing, including trafficking, which is why I'm covering this topic because now you have a connection to the Bush bloodline with Laura Bush. And if you think these people are actually Christian, look, I'm not going to speak on behalf of other people, okay? I think we could all look at somebody and say, is this a Christian or not? You're not becoming the president of the United States. You're not doing some of the things that George H.W. Bush was involved in, and certainly not some of the things that George Bush Jr. was also involved in, obviously referring to the 11th day, or September 11th, I guess I could say it here on the website. So this goes on to say that campers would go on to become executives for Neiman Marcus, dance with London's Royal Ballet, own a Gymboree franchise in the Soviet Union, or marry well and become the kind of intensely focused volunteers who would probably be happier as CEOs. Quote, I don't care where my goddaughter goes to college, but I do care where she goes to camp, Mystic alum Catherine Jones told a reporter. So this is very weird. That's a pretty bold statement that this, a Mystic alum doesn't care where her goddaughter goes to college, but wants to make sure she goes to this specific camp. And probably what was going on, if we know obviously about Freemasons and the Eastern Star, there's a lot of grooming that goes on. Those are not things that are conspiracy theories. That's a fact. We know that the DeMolays are groomed at a young age. We know Job's daughters and the Rainbow Girls are groomed at a young age by the Eastern Star witches, which is what they are. They're all witches. So Camp Mystic, which will celebrate its 100th birthday next year, was founded by E.J. Doc Stewart, a former head football coach at the University of Texas in 1926. And of course, even hearing something like that, makes you think of thoughts like Jerry Sandusky, right? A lot of these Boys Town organizations that these men preyed on specific young boys and young girls by giving into their vulnerabilities or mentoring these young children. So I'm just saying that this is very bizarre that this story actually comes out, because the first thing I thought of was obviously Maui. And then you think to yourself, where could these kids go? Is there a cover-up going on with this entire situation? Or did they have to, was some operation going to get blown open? I mean, it's sad to think that way, but when we look around at the world that we live in, we know that this is front and center, the biggest business in the world, okay? It's not Coca-Cola, it's not Pepsi, it's not, any of these other corporations like Apple. The biggest business in the world is child sex trafficking, period. These people buy and sell children for a large amount of money, and they will go to the grave to keep their secret. We obviously know what the government had to do when Pizzagate started. They had to link it up with their created QAnon movement and then give endless rabbit holes to fictitious Epstein Islands and other locations where they wanted people to look in the wrong direction. And then, of course, we know in Maui, a lot of those kids were getting trafficked and moved around underground, taken on boats off of Maui. So the article goes on to say its mission is to provide young girls with a wholesome Christian atmosphere in which they could develop outstanding personal qualities and self-esteem. Aside from when the federal government leased Camp Mystic as a convalescent camp for Army Air Corps veterans of World War II between 1943 and 1945, it has operated continuously since its founding. So you have a connection then with the United States military as well, that they chose this specific camp in Hunt, Texas, to run a military operation out of. You don't think that there potentially could have been using this location to move children around over down there by the border? Well, obviously. So these are things that we need to look at. I thought it was just a very bizarre story, and obviously I can't come across that and not cover it. Not with the connection to Pizzagate, Mystic Pizza, the term Mystic, missing children, everything that happened in Lahaina, and then all these bloodlines that attend this camp that nobody had ever heard of until now, and they're celebrating their 100th year anniversary. We know how significant anniversaries and specific dates are to the occult. So Laura Bush having a connection to this place is enough for me to go, whoa, and raise my eyebrows. And having, the Johnson clan going through there, and a lot of these people who ended up being, senators and becoming presidents of Neiman Marcus, etc. It really makes me wonder, because the first thing I think about when I think of a lot of these camps, especially these prestigious ones, I'm not talking about, you got to camp in your town, okay? And, salute your shorts type of thing, right? You just got to camp and, it's very small and they do like a field day type of deal. This is prestigious. These are bloodlines that do not mingle with the likes of us. The Bush family wouldn't even, they wouldn't even make eye contact with people like us. So clearly everybody who attended this camp had to come from money, had to be sworn to secrecy, because the people like the Bush family are not going to intermingle with people, especially knowing what George H.W. Bush was involved in during his entire lifetime, okay? And then they play the role of what? They play the role of Christian, right? They play the role of, I'm a Christian and I did this, God told me to do it, right? Remember some of the stuff we heard on September 11th where George Bush Jr. was letting us know that, God told him, that we had to act, and just very, very bizarre. So I wanted to do a rant on that. And again, if you're new to the website and you haven't seen some of the stuff with Dee Malay, Job's daughters, Rainbow Girls, this is how they groom at a young age. I always talk about this in regards to helping people wake up when we see these false flags occur at schools. Because people automatically go, so you're telling me that a kid is going to be in on this? You're telling me David Hoff, or whatever his name was, is going to be in on this and he's going to be, know exactly what to say? Well, yeah, because they get groomed at a young age and they're trained. And these people are very impressionable, especially when it comes to Freemasons and these other people who are very prominent in their towns and their communities, especially some of these locations we see the school shootings take place at, because they're usually very rich towns, or they're pop-up towns like Sandy Hook was. But it's definitely food for thought. Anything else comes out about it, I will bring it to your attention. But definitely something that really made me suspicious. I got goosebumps, in a bad way when I heard about these poor children. And I said, well, what's going on? And then I heard Christian camp. And I said, Christian camp. And then they get all this information out, within a day or two. So-and-so went there, so-and-so went there. Neiman Marcus, London's Royal Ballet, right? Related to presidents and presidents and presidents. And you go, well, if you had something going on illegal and it was going to blow up in your face or something might come out, well, I mean, look what they did look at some of the stuff they did in Lahaina, right? You just destroy all the evidence. You think there's going to be any evidence of anything going on at this camp now? Is this camp completely underwater? Of course not, right? Easier to do that than to just shut the place down where somebody could stumble upon who knows what kind of evidence. And again, this is all speculation, but I think a lot of you who have followed my channel for years, you're probably thinking the same thing, right? Now, could the bodies obviously float away down the street? I mean, unfortunately, that can be something that happened. But if we know that with weather modification, they could target specific places, just like they did in Lahaina, just like they did in Los Angeles, whether it's smart meters or directed energy weapons, or just creating, geoengineering over the whole area over there, and then continuously hitting it, right? They had said that this town of Hunt is going to get nailed over and over and over again the next day or two. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about this story. Obviously, this wouldn't be something that I'd be able to post on YouTube anyway, but I want to thank everybody who is over here on the website. Obviously, most of you know I have mentioned in the previous video that my channels are all wiped out, but there's greater tragedies in the world. Just obviously, I mean, these people really don't want me to have a voice in this world. I mean, it's pretty insane, the methods that they go to, how sickly obsessed they are with me. Frightening. But thanks to everybody who is here on the website. Let me know what you guys think. In the forum, you could post anything you hear about, maybe anybody down in that area. If you've ever heard of this camp before, it's the first I've ever heard of it, or any other suspicious things that might, get you to raise your eyebrow a little bit. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all well. God bless you and your families as always.